going to go ahead and call the Nottingham Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, August 9th, 2023 to order. Before we begin, I'll have everyone go around the room, introduce themselves.
Robert Davies, alternate.
Ian McKinnon.
Edward Veal.
Susan Mooney.
Charlene Anderson.
And Mr. Davies will be seated in voting tonight for Mrs. Bascom. So we have a couple of items and we'll take them in order. The first is a continued case number 23-007 DR Falzone on Raymond Road. Applicant requesting a design review hearing for a 20 lot proposed open space subdivision, property identified as tax map 69, lot number 17. The applicant has reached out to us and requested continuance to September 13th. The reason for that is to allow for some time for us to have legal counsel chime in. There's a question about the access, the 50-foot section that the applicant was proposing for the roadway. So we sent a request to council for some input to the board and possibly to the applicant as to our zoning ordinance that was enacted, requiring a 25-foot vegetative buffer on each side of right of way. So whether or not that would pertain to this or not. So that's the reason why this design review has been requested to be continued to the meeting of September 13th. And that is within we allow up to, I think it's 2 or 3 meetings for design reviews, and I think it's a 90-day period. That's well within that, and we're going to the second meeting. Any further discussion on that? All right, so I did already send that off to council the other day just to get a jump on it, and requested, if possible, response to the board by August 23rd, so that we have time to review, and if there's anything that they can share with you about the applicant, they may, if that's within our legal option. So a request to continue, that would be in order.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we continue case 23-007 DR Falzone Raymond Road to September 13th at 7 p.m.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Anderson, and a second by Ms. Mooney to continue the case until September 13th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 5-0. Excuse me. And just for anybody in the audience, for continued cases or things like that, if the applicant's not here, we generally do not reopen the public hearing, since they're not there to hear the testimony. So that's why we are now open public hearing on these. The next one is, and also anybody that's here for that meeting, again, no additional abutter notification goes out for that since it's already a continued and noticed case. It'll be on the agenda for September 13th. We will not be speaking about that case again until that night. The next item is case number 23-008 SIT Clar, I believe it is, 55 McCurlis Road. Application from R. Gregory Clar for a site plan review to run a small wood processing business on the property, which currently does not have a dwelling on it. This is identified as tax map 39 lot 13-8 at 55 McCurlis Road. This applicant has also requested that their case be continued until Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, is there a motion would be in order?
Mr. Chair, I move that we continue case number 23-008 SIT Clar at 55 McCurlis Road to be continued to Wednesday, September 13th at 7 p.m.
I'll second.
It's a motion by Ms. Mooney, second by Ms. Anderson to continue case 23-008 SIT to Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion also carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda, we have 3 conceptuals, and we'll take them in order. The first is conceptual number 23-002 Reynolds for 7 Berry Road. And for anybody in the audience, a conceptual is a non-binding, kind of high-level discussion with applicants. It's considered informal. It's to allow individuals to come before us that may be looking to potentially come before with us with an application for subdivision, lot line adjustment, design review, some land use option, and get some direction before they potentially invest in surveys, engineering fees, and all that. So, is there anybody here for that applicant? Yep, come on up, please. If you could just state your name and then just give us an idea of what you're looking to do.
Hello, my name is Stephen Reynolds of Rochester, New Hampshire. I'm the owner of 7 Berry Road here in Nottingham. This is a 4-unit multifamily property that I purchased just over a year ago. It's my understanding that this property has a long history of prior landlords expanding the property without using the proper approval methods. This has given the property a bit of a reputation. This is a reputation that I would like to change. My goal is to clean up the property in order to improve the curbside appearance, improve the building, and in turn, improve the quality of the tenants being rented to. The reason I'm here today is to discuss an improvement to the exterior of the property. As I laid out in the conceptual plan, I would like to remove some old stumps, backfill them, and add a fresh layer of gravel over the parking area. This will not add any additional parking, but rather move the existing parking further into the property away from the streets, as well as organize the cars in a more desirable manner for emergency vehicle access, plowing, and in general for curb appeal. Just to be clear, in revising this parking area, there is no intention to add additional units or tenants. It is only intended to rebuild the lot that I have, organize the current vehicles, and improve the appearance, not to expand the parking area for additional vehicles. So my question is, what permits or variances will I be subject to when removing stumps on my property and repairing my existing parking lot? Additionally, what am I not thinking of that could place me in a non-conformance situation?
All right, thank you. So obviously you provided quite a bit of information in the with your conceptual application for everybody, including a sketch, not a hand-drawn sketch, but a sketch with some of the parking things. One of the comments I had our planner isn't here tonight, our circuit rider planner, so I asked just for any kind of comments he might have seen on these, and he just specifically mentioned be cautious about using the term or claiming fire lane access. I guess those have specific requirements.
Okay.
So it might be one of those things where you're just trying to designate that there's, you know, you're keeping some kind of access open, but
Just room for something to fit through. Yep.
we did receive, it looks like sometime yesterday, so we probably just got it today. It looks like a letter from an abutter, which I can read, and it sounds like this goes into things you may have. Some of in there is a copy of a complaint they had filed with code enforcement in May of '21, and looks like a copy of an administrative decision from the building inspector, code enforcement officer in October of 2021. So do you have those by any chance, or are you familiar with those? Okay. You mentioned the history, so I didn't know if you were aware of
Being
kind
that
of
just
administrative decision.
I was gonna say, I was looking at the dates.
Yeah.
yeah,
The
I
dates
did-
of it were,
I am familiar with this. This was just before I bought the property.
Okay. So I think maybe this is partially why you're here as well, is because it looks like as part of this administrative decision, there was a number 4 on there. Any future expansion will require a site plan.
well, not even that, I think there was a variance that was supposed to be
Part of it.
submitted to,
Yeah, so there was some concern. So
2 deadlines that were given to the,
I'll read the applicant's letter in, since, nope, we just received it. I just read it tonight, so I'll just read it in so everybody can hear it. So the individual submitting this was Dirk Grotenhuis, identifies himself as an abutter. Dear planning board members, based on the planning board meeting agenda for tonight, there is an application for a conceptual site plan review that I'd like to provide input on. I'm a direct abutter to this property, and the property is a non-conforming multifamily dwelling with up to 13 separate leased spaces and 4 units. There was a long history of violations and non-compliance, and it's documented in the town's files. In 2005, the ZBA approved a variance to Article 6G, Section 3B, to allow a 4-unit multifamily dwelling in the residential zone. A condition of that variance was to submit a site plan application for approval by the planning board. That condition was never met. No site plan has been submitted since then. The code enforcement office did not follow up on conditional approval at that time. Recently, in 2021, the owner of the at the time, made alterations to the property, including moving a shed within the 100-foot landscape buffer and expanding the parking lot with gravel. I filed a complaint dated May 25th, 2021, and it goes into some of the details of the violations. The town code enforcement office issued an administrative decision and stated that any future expansion will require a site plan. The town did not respond to the parking lot expansion. The ZBA denied a variance request to keep the shed within the 100-foot landscape buffer, and the owner was required to move it back to its original position. The conceptual diagram shown by the applicant before you are now inaccurate, not to scale, do not depict the existing conditions. The parking expansion being shown is within the 100-foot landscape buffer and within wetland setbacks. The 6-acre site is already overoccupied with the amount of separate tenants in their cars, which they are parking all over the site. The diagrams are counting existing spaces that are not there. These are on the front lawn and in the roadway. The proposed parking diagram adds spaces for a total of 20 future spaces. This is excessive for a 4-unit multifamily dwelling, which the town has not monitored or enforced for years. I asked the planning board to inform the applicant that a full site plan application would be required depicting all the existing conditions, property line setbacks, proposed conditions, occupancy, septic, wells, etc. And they will need to provide justification for any of the modifications they are proposing. So that's in a butters letter. I read it in, so just, sometimes more information is helpful for applicants when they're before us, so that if you're coming before us with an application or something like that, you're aware of probably some of what might come back up again.
So
At least
I
from-
have a letter sent back to him from the town,
Yeah.
which dismissed 2, 3, 4, and 6, saying that they were, let me see. An administrative decision from the town's building inspector regarding these 6 items issued on October 19th, 2021. Items 2, 3, 4, and 6 were determined not to be violations. And then they went into 5 for the shed, which it was put back in place, and I have actually since removed it altogether.
Okay.
And then 1 for the septic system, which goes into that and how there had to be a new state-approved, system for that. My other question is, what determined what the previous lot was and what was considered expanded? Because they've been parking like that for decades now, so when was this expansion? I'm just under the interpretation when I bought it, that whole thing was a parking lot, that's where they were parking.
Right.
So I know too, what is that you're reading from? Is that just a summary that you were given, or
I can
That's,
provide this to you, this is from,
just because it looks different than what?
yeah, the Nottingham Borders,
I think
Because
so.
we have the October 19th.
okay.
I think this is, I assume this is what the town administrator,
No, this was, I think, I don't know if included this, if it was included from that a butter.
So this says, please accept this response on behalf of the board. So I would assume that was this board, but I don't know.
yeah, because we have
I
the,
was given this when I was under contract,
okay.
and I can provide this to you right now.
Yeah, that'd be good, just because we have the October 19th administrative decision, so.
Sounds similar. So the items that were,
Yeah, 2 looks like they just advised him to move the dumpster, so it was kind of just a notice. 3 was the tree, and that was discussed that the road agent was fine with it, it was safety hazard.
the one was, the complaint findings from this letter from the administrative decision was, it's currently 13 bedrooms with only 10 approved, state approved for septic. The town has issued building permits for the 13 bedrooms. Because the town had previously approved the 13 bedrooms, it has been operating that way for years. The owner must get state approved for 13 bedrooms meeting town setbacks.
So so I kind of read through the administrative decision, and it looks like, yeah, I mean, most of it was like kind of a situation of too much time had passed to enforce certain elements.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the one I am most curious about is the one that is enforceable, and the state I know takes them very seriously, is the septic approval from the state
Okay.
for the 13 bedrooms versus the 10.
Do you know if that's been done?
I have no data on
So
that.
some of that is more, still goes back to code enforcement more than necessarily like this board.
Okay.
Yeah. That's, yeah, so like, I mean, I guess if the board has a consensus that there is no requirement for site plan, if that's the case, that is a code enforcement, you just go through the state permitting process for, you just need to find a New Hampshire licensed septic designer, and where there's an existing system, they likely would do a, evaluation of the system. There's a whole state approved process to do that, and then essentially have to prepare, I don't know when the septic system was built, but if it was in the last 20 years, there should be a decent record of it actually maybe even here in the town office.
Okay.
And they basically just have to submit an application to the state and go through that approval process, so.
Okay.
And that is, yeah, that's handled through code enforcement reviews it, planning board doesn't see septic plans.
Okay. I will look into the septic for sure.
I have a question. What's the date on that letter you've got, and who'd you say you thought it was from?
June 8th, 2022, and the first paragraph says, "The Nottingham Board of Selectmen received your complaint for 7 Berry Road, Nottingham, on behalf of Dirk and Pamela, not being able to pronounce her last name, dated May 20, 2022. Please accept this response on behalf of the board." So, the Nottingham Board of
So that, it looks like it was a cover letter from the Board of Selectmen back to
Yeah,
Mr.
but
Gross.
why is that not in this part of this packet?
We didn't get that?
Because the abutter was the one who sent them, so he probably didn't.
Yeah, the date of that was May of
I just
2022,
printed what he
or
sent,
2021.
the abutter sent.
June 8, 2022.
That's kind of a cover letter, and then what we have, I think, is probably what the town administrator has on file for that.
We don't have anything newer than 2021
Yeah,
in my book.
that's
That
why I was
letter's
trying to
from
figure out if the date
2022.
was correct on there or not, but.
Yeah, I mean, he said he'll give us a copy of it, I mean, it'd be good just to know, it's always
Some of
hard to
that-
figure out the timeline of these things.
Yeah, and some of that doesn't, again, select board has different purview than this board, the building inspector, so we're not an enforcement board, so we're there for, new uses, expanded uses, lot line adjustments, subdivisions, things like that, things that trigger either site plan reviews, subdivisions,
Okay.
things of that nature. So we're not an enforcement board, so I just wanna make sure that's clear for everybody. We do get triggered, things do get triggered to us, when there's changes in use, especially if it's like a commercial use that's being, use is changing. They're still things that are subject to the zoning ordinance, that usually again gets enforced by the building inspector. So like, the max number of, we don't limit the number of bedrooms, there's a limit to the number of, units, for multifamily units for residential lots.
It's only a 4-unit, regardless of 13 bedrooms, there's just 13 bedrooms in the building. It's a
Yeah.
4-unit, there's 4 kitchens, there's 4.
So some of that doesn't, again, go here. I guess the only thing that I would think would, reading through what the code enforcement has stated in that letter from October of 21, if this is the correct letter, the administrative decision. If this is correct with, the site plan would only be required if there was gonna be a future expansion. So yes, there was a condition at some point that a site plan was supposed to be filed, one never got filed.
Yep.
According to this, they checked with legal and basically the timeline and everything else that's occurred since then made it moot. But they can enforce it if there's gonna be a future expansion. So I don't, unless you're proposing an expansion, the things to be aware of would go more back to probably what you're gonna fall into with code, the building inspector. So it's trying to make something that's non-conforming more conforming is always good. So if something encroached onto a right of way, you went beyond setbacks, those kind of instances. So improving parking, improving, those items. If it's not an expansion of the parking area, not an expansion of anything else, I don't think.
Less non-conforming.
If you're making it less, if it's non-conforming now because if something got expanded beyond whatever.
Yeah.
You make it less non-conforming, that's not a site plan. Again, would it be great for us to have one on file? Sure, cause it's something to measure against in the future for everybody.
Yeah. So as far as the site plan goes, if I did wanna make one, would it be as simple as, this is my current condition? I know there's non-conformances, would it get approved, or could you not approve a site plan with? Cause typically a site plan is made when original development, right? So this would have to document.
Or redevelopment of a project, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, you'd be considered pre-existing non-conforming, so from a zoning perspective, the goal is you can't propose something more non-conforming.
Okay.
So, if you wanted to add more units, or, like, if you wanted to put a bump out, like, keep the same number of units, but expand the building,
Yep.
that would be considered expansion, and then kinda opens it up for site plan, which again, kind of opens it up to, we have to review every site plan, it'd be a site plan, which then we have to review it to the site plan regulations, which,
Okay.
the goal here is obviously to try and make things as, less non-conforming, I guess, so, more in compliance with code. Yeah, it's kind of a tricky one, cause we haven't,
Have you had a chance, did you get a chance to speak with like the code enforcement officer, the building inspector, Dale Sylvia?
I spoke with the building inspector.
Okay.
Quite a bit on this, yeah, he advised that I come here and get your guys' opinion on this, but
thought-
yeah,
Thought that might be all
I'm
you're
not,
doing, but it-
yeah, I'm not trying to expand, I'm just trying to repair the current spot, it's all muddy and it's, they're not using it, they're parking out on the street instead, and I'd really like to, get it to the point where I put new gravel over everything, get the stumps out of the middle of the parking lot, and then that way we can line everything up nice and straight, put them further back away from the road, and I can enforce that with my tenants.
Yeah, and I think if I remember driving by this property, I think I remember that seeing one area that, I think, the parking area got expanded, it would have been years ago, so several years ago, before he bought it. Where area was expanded, so it probably used to be lawn, it got expanded to gravel,
you're talking about like along the road there, kind of in the middle?
yeah, so basically, one thing to consider as you look at this is, you know, be mindful of setbacks as much as possible. Anything you could do to improve, that situation and cleaning up appearance, you know, which is what you've indicated you wanted to do anyway. Be mindful of, like, you know, we do have wetland setbacks and things like that, so, you know, expansion of a driveway or area that then encroaches on, you know, so any new expansion into a wetland area.
Okay. Can I repair a current, driveway though?
If it's there currently, I would think yes. Again, that would be the building inspector that would.
Okay, got it.
So when you get to wetlands, you can run into, the town, because we have zoning against, you know,
Yeah.
that buffers and things like that. And then the state with the Department of Environmental Services, has pretty strong protections for wetlands as well, so. So if you start encroaching on those or impacting those, filling them in, things like that, you know, you'll probably ran askew.
So I'm looking at so is the covered bridge there, is that because there's like is that a deep, like, gully next to the road, or is it just more of somebody,
That's a.
is it just a roadside ditch there and that's kind of built over?
I don't know if
or-
it's runoff, I'm not sure if it's year round, but there's water underneath it, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my only concern though really is again, we don't want anybody to become more non-conforming, so I know you were kind of looking at your sketch and then just some of the photos that I'm looking at is that the area kind of between the covered bridge and that, I guess it'd be probably the easternmost or southernmost unit, is that area you're kind of calling the muddy area? Is
Yeah.
that, you just want to make sure that
It's muddy
if it's
from
kind of a
rainwater.
mix, yeah.
It's not a actual wetland area.
Okay,
It-
yeah, and so that's where, and so is that,
It's just
and it is
long
being used currently for parking, or only if it's not
It's
wet is
used
what you're
currently,
saying?
yes, but the tenants
for?
tend to prefer to be on the pavement blacktop out on the street. On the grass in the front of the property.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the big,
We have a copy.
certainly, yeah, I mean, looking at the photos here, I'm just looking at like, it's a photo looking through the covered bridge, I think, at that area that's kind of,
Yep.
and it does, yeah, it's just dirt, or maybe it was grass at one time, but, certainly doesn't look like it would qualify as a wetland. I mean, my suggestion is, just because of the history on the project, it might be worthwhile where you already, to satisfy that septic design state approval process, is to look into, at least looking at the numbers from your end to see if it's worth doing a site plan, because I think it's only gonna help you if abutters see what's going on and have concerns, is the site plan is going to protect you, and I mean, again, this is conceptual, but when, you know, if an application were to come before us, we understand that something is non-conforming, the goal is to improve the conditions, so, we're not gonna say, realistically, I don't think we would say, well, you gotta meet the 100-foot buffer, cause then I think the house is probably at the 100-foot buffer, but,
It's moving in.
yeah, so the goal here is to improve the property, understanding that we're kind of left with what we have now, so. I think, I mean, just from, if we wanna, if both, I think it protects you more and protect everybody more. If you did have a site plan, there's obviously a cost component to that, so it's up to you to make that decision.
I'm unfamiliar
Just
with,
because it's a commercial, I mean, technically it's a commercial endeavor, so that's where it's,
I'm unfamiliar with site plans. Is it possible for a site plan to be denied? Or like, is it gonna just document my current condition and that's good? It'll be approved by somebody because it has all the conditions met and then that's the end?
yeah, and that's kind of the issue when you do submit a site plan. I mean, that's why I said, like, you can weigh the pros and cons. I mean, from my perspective, I would love to see a site plan.
Yeah.
Just because it has something on file. But yes, if you submit a site plan application, it would potentially open you up to, if that is denied, it's an application at that point, and we take yes or no action on it.
Okay.
If it's denied, I believe then it's kind of a gray area where it has to stay as it is, and then nobody really wants that either, but I can't speak to what would be decided in the future either, so.
I'd probably try to get you in touch with so we have like a staff planner, from the Strathfield Regional Planning Commission. I would probably try to connect you with him a little bit to try to answer some of that, because maybe there's another option that we're not thinking of, like, is there a current conditions plan that we could put on the file or something like that? That's
Yeah.
not approval, it's saying, it's just documenting, here's current conditions.
Yep.
It creates like a set point and whatever, looking at proposed parking, I mean, I think one of the comments was, I think there's like almost 20 proposed spaces, or 20 spaces for 4 units. That does seem like a lot. If this was to come before us as like a multifamily conversion, from because we do have that option for homes, like, and I don't know if this even meets it, but, one of the things that usually is, trying to shield like abutters and everything else from the fact that it's no longer a single family home, so you'll see the parking put in the rear, so, so from the front, you drive by, it's a big house, The best example I can think of right off the top of my head is down 152, as you.
The new one, yeah.
The new one past the school, that's on the right, that's, I think, a 5-unit, but all the parking's behind it, so you don't see it.
Yeah.
So,
I
things
think,
like that, I don't even know
yeah.
with your current site, if you could do that, because I don't know what's behind your house, if that's where your septic is,
That's
things
where
like
the
that.
septic
Yeah, it
is,
looks like
and it goes uphill quite a bit.
And, I think coming from,
And as part of that, one avenue is where you need to pursue this new septic plan, with the state. There is opportunities, I've seen this done, where there's a certain amount of detail, obviously, that goes on that if you kind of consult with our circuit rider, planner, and the code enforcement officer, and it's agreed that, a site plan isn't necessarily needed because we're making the property less non-conforming, is you can, to a degree, like if it needs to be documented, there's a certain amount of information that could be on that plan, because that has to go on the file anyway. Because it's the septic plan, we get a copy, Dale would actually see it as part of going to the state. I think he has to approve it before it goes to the state or something like that, so, instead of like having to do double work, you can sometimes you've already got to do a plan potentially for the septic, is that some of that, limits of gravel, that kind of thing, could just be, memorialized on a plan that way. It's kind of like when you build a house, a lot of times, and you put a septic plan in for the house, that's the only time that you have a record of like where they want the driveway, where they actually want the house.
Okay.
Because if we see a subdivision, they show a box on a piece of paper, and then 1% of the time, it actually ends up being exactly what the size of the house is and stuff. Yeah, this is a tricky one.
I had a question. On your parking plan that you're proposing, I think it's, for units D, it looks like you're proposing a new, like, driveway entrance.
That's already over there.
That's
where
already-
they're currently parking,
Oh,
yeah.
that's already over there?
Yeah.
It's actually shown, on page 4 of, Mr. Grotenhuis's, like, 2021. You can actually, that's the photo I was kind of referring to, so if you keep going, you'll get to page 4.
page 5.
I was looking at 4, just because I was looking there.
It's this stuff right here.
Oh, was it that? What unit did she say?
7D.
It's the two-car unit for unit D, I think it is.
Oh, okay, I'm on the other side, yeah, sorry.
Again, it's hard, because since we didn't have a site plan before us, I don't know what was here, what's been changed,
Yeah.
Those 2 spaces over there were added later on, because then you get, again, there's usually like widths of driveways even onto a town road, and number of driveways for one lot that are allowed. That usually goes through the road agent and the building inspector too, for those, so there might be a request from them potentially, you know, to work with you to, you know, maybe that width is too wide for that, the current entrance, to narrow that, or maybe they'll ask you to eliminate that second driveway and incorporate it in with the rest of it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point, because you might, I mean, it's certainly amenable if you don't have anybody, like those two spaces that are kinda like, where those four cars are teed up to each other, where if people aren't backing into the road, obviously reducing conflict is great, but.
do you know how far, like, what the distance is between, say, like, you know, the current parking area and the lot line that would be to the, sure.
Like just to the road itself, or?
No, to each side, I guess. So from like that, the parking lot area with the two spots,
So
how far is that from your,
the westerly side, the one closer to the bridge,
yep,
that is about 100 feet to the lot line.
From the bridge?
From the bridge to the lot line is about 100 feet. There's no pin, so I couldn't get it exact, but
Okay.
based on the GIS and, the tax one it was.
Yeah.
And then the other side was around, what did I do? I wrote it down. It's 35 to the building, and then the building is probably another 30 feet, so I guess it's 60 to 70 feet from that side. That's the existing paved driveway on that side, though.
oh, okay, with the two spots?
The one with the two slots is almost touching the property line.
Okay.
The other side of the larger parking lot is probably 70 feet.
Yeah, so I guess that'd be my kind of comments. If you're, in general, just improving and, improving, not expanding any kind of uses, and your overall goal is to make things less non-conforming, and your concern is, you know, what setbacks to be aware of. As long as you're operating within the setbacks and everything, I don't think there's if this legal, response is accurate, I don't think there's anything right now that would trigger a site plan for us.
I don't think we require, yeah, we can't require, I don't think we can require it, yeah.
So what kind of an application would I, or permit would I put in to bring gravel in?
I don't know that
I don't
you need
know.
one, so you might, again, it doesn't hurt to ask ahead of time, to the
That'd be
building
to the
inspector, to Dale.
inspector, okay.
Yeah, do a site walk with them.
He might refer you back to the road agent if we have one at the moment. I can't remember if we just hired one. But, you know, they might just say, you know, there's nothing, but if you can, you know, there might be a culvert that's required somewhere, or they might say, you know, if you can narrow this width, great, or maybe they're gonna say, you know, improve the turn, something like that.
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to try and not, you know, if it truly is an area used currently or can be used for parking, is to try and mimic that, not expand it, cause it's just gonna avoid.
And it sounds like your first big item is if it hasn't been done yet, that state septic approval, cause that had an action time on it from, unless that's changed. That had
That's something we have to
timeframe
dig
on it.
into.
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you reach out to, I mean, there's a number of firms or even, people that just one-off guys that do septic design, it's pretty easy to find somebody. They'll be able to do that evaluation and kind of walk you through that process of, how to get the state approval.
So my, and I'll provide it with you, it says with respect to the septic system, the town mandated the property owner obtain state approval for the system that will be sufficient for the number of bedrooms. This approval was obtained by the state February 10, 2022.
So we do have a record of one?
Yeah.
But
And
again,
also
it's
approved the
not us.
septic construction on February 10, 2022, based on the state's approval.
Okay, so hopefully that was
That
done.
isn't,
But
yeah.
again, that's not us anyway, so we wouldn't, that's
Yeah.
why we wouldn't know.
Okay.
Well, what that likely was is if they were able to, if there was a design completed, oftentimes where there's an existing system, you have to have a design prepared and approved by the state. Say if there is a complete failure, you can then say, here's my approval to reconstruct a system. So it's,
Got it.
like, you're not, he wouldn't have been required to rip up the current system. There's a
Okay.
whole process to go through in terms of you essentially have to have like one in your pocket.
So I just need to put my hands on that state approval.
I would, yeah, just circle back to make sure, I mean, yeah. Cause if that is in fact there, then that would satisfy the requirement technically, that if it's on file. And if that's new enough that it would be in the planning office too. There'd be a hard copy somewhere.
Okay, this planning office here.
Yeah, and it certainly would be available, there'd be a PDF of it as well at the state level. New Hampshire DES,
One stop.
yeah, you might be able to use, there's a piece of software called One Stop. If you just Google NHDES One Stop, you can look for records of that, and that is new enough that unless it fell through the cracks, it certainly is on file at the state.
Okay, New Hampshire Delta Echo Sierra?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Department of Environmental Services.
Okay.
So, if not, they're pretty good if you need to call them. Their systems are a little weird, but they try and do their best.
Okay.
And like I said, you can reach out to the planner, his name's Blair. I don't know what our options are there, if we could ever record a current conditions plan. If we could, a benefit potentially to you of that is, if there's a complaint in the future saying you've expanded,
Yep.
you say, well, no, here's what it was.
I would like to do that. I guess I'll reach out
I don't know
to
if
him.
there might be a negative side, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be curious, because a lot of times, the only reason we keep files is because they're associated with an application to associate them to, so if, I guess it's probably never been done, but if somebody wants to hand in a plan that's in existing conditions, they
Well,
just file it away, I
Well,
guess.
the building
but-
inspector it might not be our folder that goes into, it might be the building inspector's.
Yeah.
If the building inspector has a case file for the property, it might be something that just goes complete and formal into their file that's signed and dated, so that it just creates a point
Okay.
to measure against. All right, so a lot of non-answers, but,
This is helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool,
thank you very much.
thank you.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Sorry.
I just going to, before you go, Mr. Reynolds,
Sorry.
just, looking at your, prospective, design for parking,
Yes.
if you move a portion of those parking areas behind the buildings, it would present the area as more rural and more pleasing as people drive by.
Yep.
Possibly for the units C and D would be in back, and maybe a couple of the guest locations, for parking as well, rather than having all of those right up front.
Yeah, I'll walk the property and see if I can find a
It
way
looks
to
as
do
though
so.
there's extensive acreage behind the buildings.
Yeah. Yep.
You can,
Just gonna be tricky where the septic is, basically.
septic
Yeah.
and well,
Oh, that's
things to be
true,
mindful
Yeah.
of.
Sometimes it works,
It's
but,
not flat back there either. It goes right up the hill.
Okay,
Right behind the
but it's not wet.
Not wet. No.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
thank you.
The next conceptual on the agenda is conceptual number, 23-003 for, it's listed as Rogier Laflamme, 106 Church Street. Anybody's here for that? Just come on up and, sorry, grab a second chair. If you can, just introduce yourselves and, give us an overview of what you're looking to do and
Sure. My name is Monica Rogier and Stephanie Laflamme. Together we are the joint owners of Nature's Place Early Learning Center, currently located at 106 Church Street, right at the Nottingham Community Church. We have owned and operated Nature's Place since December of 2020, and what has started with 19 children has grown to more than 30 enrolled students, 7 staff, a wait list of more than 45 children, often almost 2 years long, and a space that the program can no longer grow in. 186 Old Turnpike Road, also known to some people as the former Daniels Hall, is a 3,600 square foot building that has one property border that abuts Route 4, the high traffic area. In conjunction with traditional bank and SBA funding to buy this location for the purpose of expanding our center, we are currently under agreement on this property and are hopeful we can move into the space, permitting everything goes well, by the end of the year. We have also already met with our licensing board, and this space would allow us to double our current capacity. The building currently sits empty, but has undergone many renovations for the intended use of that as a bar and grill. The tax records list the building as being used as a function hall. Today, we are asking if the planning board would see any issue with changing its current use as that of a function hall to a space for children in an early education and learning environment. Most people might consider this daycare, we call it childcare. The building will need to have many inside changes done, which include new ceilings, walls, HVAC systems, monitored fire alarm system, lighting, ramps, and some odds and ends, such as putting in a small kitchen, doors, paint, and flooring. We realize there are other items that will need to be addressed, such as signage, the driveway apron, possibly the coming off of Route 4, and even water filtration systems. But we have an amazing general contractor lined up to oversee these renovations, and the other pieces we know can be met with confidence. There's a really big need and demand for childcare in our local community. We see that the community is growing very rapidly. We turn families away every single day. We add them to our waiting list. At this point, most families will probably never get into our program. We know that we're not alone in the community with that same need. One way that our program can help fill this need is to expand our program, and expanding it into this space is a great way to start helping that local community need. We hope that we can answer any questions and anything about the pictures that we've shared with you tonight. So that being said, what would our next steps be should we purchase this location? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I had the wrong address, I put Church Street, which is their,
Is our current
their
location.
current location.
Totally threw me
So
off.
It's actually 186 Old Turnpike.
I was gonna say, I'm
Sorry
like,
about
what the?
We do not want to purchase Church Street location.
Okay. That's why I was thrown off.
I
I
had to
saw
turn-
the site plan. I'm like, that doesn't look right.
I had the Turnpike Road in my head the whole time, and I was like, wait, Church Street, wait.
That's all
Question
right.
myself.
I think I'll start. I'm really glad. I wish I saw more daycares coming before boards. I mean, I don't think my wife and I would have even had an option to put our second in daycare because it was a 2-year wait. So, I'm really glad to see you guys looking to expand the business locally. So, and I do think this is a good location. At first, I was very confused with the Church Street location. So,
Apologies.
yeah, that's all right. I think in terms of, and maybe this is, cause this site plan here was from 2009, this is back when they were going to do it as like a function hall
I
or
think
a
that
barn grill, right?
Expired.
Yeah.
When it was approved to convert it, I think the site plan expired after that, cause it wasn't, there was conditions, I think, and then,
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, I know they came back before, simply the site plan had expired, cause it'd been like 2 years, and there's usually a year on those. So as far as I know, the site plan for it to be converted into a restaurant expired.
yeah, so to that, I mean, what I like about it is, so this would, jump in if I think I'm wrong, it would be constitute a change of use, but it is in the commercial zone, so, I mean, from my perspective, it certainly fits in with what the property is zoned to do. It would need a site plan, so similar to what you see here, a lot of times it might just be updating per things you need to do to the property. Luckily, a lot of it's already there. I mean, I like the use because it is, well, you guys probably like it's off the road, yet still accessible. The two things that I know, it's mostly just, again, it's not really, these are things that are not, one of them is in our purview, but because it's a commercial use, is it does require the New Hampshire DOT driveway permit. Sometimes that's as easy, cause if actually you're the new owner, you actually have to submit a permit to actually obtain the new license, so, and at that time, they would review it and say, is it more impactful or less impactful? So certainly, and you can reach out to them at any point. District 6 is based out of Durham. And then my only thing was, it's a little hard to read here, is the access is through that adjacent parcel. So my only question would be, I guess, making sure that there's legal right to access through it. I mean, I assume if it was proposed this way, that there must have been something established, so I just can't read the details to it, but.
The warranty deed, there is a shared driveway.
Okay, all right, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so one good thing is, you know, it wasn't that long ago that site plan came before us, so you could you could potentially go back and see that and see what waivers were requested, because again, a site plan, we have our site plan regulations in our application, it's a long checklist. It's not uncommon for people to request waivers from a significant amount of that, depending on what is occurring with the site plan, so, you know, a full survey or whatever, things like that. So there may be a number of things that you would request a waiver from, and saying, you know, and give the verbiage for that. My guess is a lot of it would be the same as had been requested for waivers prior. again, the planner, as you get ready to move forward with it, would be potentially a person that could help you, like, gauge, like, say, okay, you may want to request waiver from this, this, and this. These aspects, they're might be overkill for a situation like this. The way our zoning reg is written is that, yes, site plan review is required. I think this would be considered probably an educational facility, being a daycare, or childcare center, or I could call it a service facility, but retail facility, agricultural center, house of worship, professional office space, we could probably consider that too, but. So I think you're within the realm of what our commercial district is. A concern, I think, it would be good for you to check in with DOT, just to see.
Okay.
So you don't control your curb cut, because the curb cut's not on your property, or not on this property, it's on the abutting property.
Okay,
But we don't control that access either.
sure.
This town doesn't, it's a state road. So the biggest thing, you know, with daycares, there's only one entrance here. There's no probably possible way to put a second entrance in at all. Would, you know, it'd be very difficult, probably very expensive, and then would require a separate curb cut, which I'm sure DOT probably wouldn't want.
Not on that curve, it's not.
So I don't know, one thing we would usually look for on a site plan is kind of like, you know, estimated hours, number of people, number of kids, that kind of thing. The building inspector slash, and also probably the fire chief would have probably comment about what the max occupancy would be there, and what may be required, and again, and what. In this specific use probably has its own, you know, its own things for that, so that's not our purview.
Okay,
You know, we wouldn't be setting the number of, you know, people that are there, it's gonna be, that's what's gonna be, that's.
We defer to them.
You know, one potential thing though, that does come from that we might ask about, so if it's, you know, if there's 100 children proposed to be taken care of, I'm just throwing a number out there. You know, drop off and pickups can be, you know, at other daycares, my kids are in a daycare. And
It's
I
a
see
peak
it,
hour,
I see it at other schools as I drive around, you know, there might be a backup of cars along a road, something we would definitely not wanna happen on Route 4. So just be mindful of that, or have a plan for that incorporated to try to avoid that scenario from happening. Is this driveway wide enough for like 2 cars to pass?
I personally feel like it is, driving up and down it several times, I've had more than enough room for another vehicle to get through there,
Okay, so I'd say that might be another thing that would be potentially helpful if
but definitely something to look
wasn't.
at, sure.
slightly expanded so that it does allow two-way traffic, you know.
Yeah, technically a commercial driveway in town, it's, I wanna say 24, but it actually might be 22 feet. But if the paved surface is not, you might have the option to do compacted gravel or something, just cause I know
Okay.
that's a less of obviously a financial commitment initially for
Yeah.
that.
Okay, good to know, thank you.
That's more of an operations thing too, cause it's kinda unique where you're come in through shared and then you break off, so.
Yeah, the other thing we usually look at, you know, it's the septic, but that's gonna be the code enforcement that does that, you know.
Okay.
Well, if you're proposing new septic or a new well, then yes, it's, you know, where are the setbacks and things of that nature. Any new lighting being proposed, we do have like, lighting spelled out in our ordinance, you know, down lights, those kind of things.
Okay,
We don't say dark sky compliant, but that's basically what the nature of it is. You know, anybody else?
I was just gonna say, parking spaces, we usually would wanna know how many cars would be, you know, parked, you know, during the hours of operation, and where that parking would be, that would be just another consideration of the site plan.
I have a concern that might be premature at this stage, but I'd like to put it out there.
Of course.
What age groups will you be attending to for children?
so this, should this project be able to go forward, we would be looking at children, infant on up to, pre-K,
Uh-huh.
just before they go into kindergarten.
Now, I have walked that stretch of road a number of times, picking up a litter for the Conservation
Sure.
Commission, and the roar of the traffic is deafening. So if you are improving the facility, plus are going to build a playground, I would keep in mind, you know, put up sound barriers or insulation of some sort, because small children's ears are very sensitive to loud noises.
Sure, thank you.
And the same thing in the planner, again, I just asked him that we had enough conceptuals before us tonight to give him, you know, if he had any comment to give him, and his again was the same about the queuing, potentially, safe discharge, safe queuing of vehicles. So that'd probably be something that would definitely come up as a question on the site plan, just make sure that there's a plan for it, it's addressed. You know, the police chief, the fire chief, the building inspector, they all may have thoughts on all those aspects, and they, you know, they can chime in if they're willing to. Anything else from anybody?
No, I think, well, I've already mentioned DOT, but I would recommend starting that process, to be honest, talking with them before you start with us, because they will take longer if they require you to do some stuff.
Of course.
They don't charge fees, so they don't have to work on there's no statutory timelines with them, so, it's kind of a dance at times, so that'll be probably just just to get ahead on that schedule will probably help you guys.
Great.
And we condition, and if we review a site plan, we condition it anyway, so,
Okay,
it's not like it holds up anything.
But if you check it with them ahead of time and they send you something saying, we don't need it because you don't control the access or whatever, having something like that
okay.
for the file would be helpful too, so that just,
Yeah.
Documentation is
'Cause
always good.
they'll tell you it's Jim Hewitt or Roger Appleton. Those are the two kind of head guys over there.
Okay,
They'll tell you from one thing you could ask is, are they going to require some sort of traffic analysis, whether that's via the engineering guidance, figuring out trip generation, like anticipated trips. To do that, you could engage with a civil engineering firm or traffic engineering firm. Those are pretty simple to put together, just data. Because it was approved in the past for a function hall, I doubt they're gonna go the next step of a well-involved study of the corridor, but
well, if-
certainly,
if-
there's a lot of unknowns with DOT, so it's
it
all depending on that data, but.
and if it had a driveway permit covered.
Yeah,
so
right, yeah, that's a good point, so that's where,
They check their files, say, oh, we didn't have a driveway permit ever for that spot, and then they come back with a list of things, but, the only other thing, I think on the prior site plan for this, you know, we usually ask about, you know, where's snow storage proposed, plowing, you know, so, you know, if there's a plan for any kind of expansion of the parking area, you could run into stuff with like, you know, stormwater. I'm sure there was nothing planned here when this was built, there was probably no stormwater plan, it looks like just a big sheet of pavement, you know, so everything just probably runs off to wherever it goes. So those are things, it's just an idea of where any kind of, proposed, snow storage is gonna go, or snow plowing is gonna occur.
and to be clear, that should be part of the site plan? Should that be like indicated on the site plan?
Yeah,
Okay.
ideally, it's just that,
it's one of the checklist items, so as you go through the checklist, it'll kind of go through, and that's where you would notice if there's, waiverable items, like if you wanted to request a waiver. And I think because it was 2019, there might be an electronic version of the application materials from that period, so Alana might be able to look through the files and see, because then you could easily figure out what they did request for waivers or something like that.
Sure.
not saying that it'll be granted again, but, you know, it gives you a starting point.
Starting point,
of
yeah.
things to see, so, cool. Any other? Do you have anything else, any other questions?
So aside from working on that site plan, what would our steps be, moving forward?
So, obviously, whatever permits you're gonna potentially need from the state and everything else, for that, confirming with, like, building inspector, the fire chief, as to what the building might need for upgrades or, you know, for the capacity and things like that. And then, the site plan.
Okay.
Coming before us, so,
Okay,
site plan application and getting that on file.
all right.
In terms of the scope of the site plan, I think you already suggested talking to Blair, our circuit writer, because he couldn't make it tonight, he probably wouldn't mind connecting with you offline and kind of going through exactly like maybe what he'd recommend for deliverables and stuff like that, so. And he can help provide guidance on
Okay,
Yeah, and a site plan.
people to involve or something like that.
sure.
Yeah, and a site plan often, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
You
off.
know, I'm good.
Site plan oftentimes isn't engineered, depending on what's being proposed, like if this was complete, if this was a bare site and there's nothing there,
Yeah.
then it usually is an engineered plan, and it's, you know, whatever. For what you're proposing, it's a change of use, whatever, it's oftentimes something like So you're taking a current plan that's already filed that maybe was surveyed or whatever, amending it, and whatever's missing, you know, is what you're requesting a waiver for. If the board at that time, when we get the waiver, says, well, no, we really do want to see it because of this, then they might deny the waiver, but, and then you would be required to go do that part of it.
And if you have any questions in between, you can always check with Elena, land use change.
You can always come back for non-conceptual, they're free, so they're, you're always welcome to come back in as you get more into the process, and if there's questions that come up that we didn't answer.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
Thank you.
Our next conceptual is number 23-004 Johnston, 39 Moores Road. And I believe our applicant is right here. And the applicant just is at the desk with us tonight just because of a sound issue with the room, so brought her a little closer. So, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here very simply. Originally, my property was purchased in 1938. And back then, they bought a lot, and a lot. And how the property was originally put together, 3 lots in the front facing the waterfront, which is 325 feet, and then a lot in the back. And that lot in the back included what was the original Mr. Moores, who owned the land and developed it, and he used to call it Mountain Road. It wasn't Moores Road, it was Mountain Road. And so now, of course, the town has merged, involuntary to me, and what I would like to do, out of what I have, the lot on the right-hand side is vacant. It's empty. I have raw land there. And I would like to have the opportunity to sell that as a house lot with a 106-foot waterfront, more or less, and really allow someone to have the availability of being on Lake Pawtuckaway. My concern and my question is, may I unmerge this to the extent that I can take away a certain parcel and then go back again? Or do I keep it as one and have a land adjustment? What are these? This is a picture I showed you which you've all seen, where the lot is. And then this is my land here. The next map I put in, and this is old, of course, but I thought it demonstrated, basically it's not written out, but this showed the old road and then the subdivision road that Mr. Moore's put in. So this is the back lot, the 4th lot here. So it's 1, 2, 3. This is the lot on the side which I would like to sell. The next map is more detailed, and I'm sorry for the quality, but it's an old fella. And this will show you the extent of the size of the lot. The original map, which I have, this is the very original. Which shows, I'm over here, this shows this lot that goes all the way back. And this is the lot I would like to sell. But again, this is where it was broken into lots. I hope I'm clarifying this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, looking, if it was if these were simply involuntarily merged lots, meaning the town merged them at some point,
Correct.
and you didn't merge them, that your
I
family
did
didn't merge
not,
them.
I
the
did
town-
not
if the town
authorize it.
merged them, there's a state law for that, and there's an application for it that goes to the select board to unmerge involuntarily merged lots, and they have, I think they have to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they find reason that said that you merged it at some point, or somebody else merged it at some point. So if that doesn't clear up any nonconformity or anything like that, doesn't mean they become building lots, it just separates it.
Opens it up.
So that it still might require, if someone wanted to build on that, you sold it off, conveyed it, and when someone wanted to build on it, they would still be subject to zoning and, you know, they may have to get variances and things like that, depending on
Correct.
what they wanna do.
And
So,
I understand that, and I have a surveyor.
wouldn't be your problem at that point if you're selling it, but the thing I didn't understand from the
I made it,
plan, so there's the tie lines for the lots, which I think just show common ownership,
Oftentimes, yes.
these.
Yeah, it's usually a common ownership.
So I don't think those show that those are merged, I think that just shows common ownership. But what I was trying to figure out is on this plan where the orange one is highlighted, did you highlight these on, or?
Yeah.
So this rectangle here,
what's he referring to?
is this a lot, or,
What's an
Oh,
orange?
this is all one this is my property.
yeah, so
But
this is
what
your
we-
property right now, this
what
whole
we-
thing.
What we were doing, we were looking at it from the perspective of 4 lots. The 4th lot that went in was behind the 3 in the front. So we just went across that little private road now, which was the old road, which abuts the fence. And we were just saying, if we were breaking out the lots, we would have to take something from the back lot.
Okay, and is
It was just,
this
not,
a back lot?
no, the back lot goes the entire length of the property. It's
Seeing
long,
across the back of two. I mean, that's the problem too, is like, you don't, sometimes you don't know which map is truly correct.
Yeah.
I'm pulling up the GIS real quick, sometimes that just kind of paints a better picture.
So it's these.
Alright, so I think I've kind of sorted it out. So if you look,
Yep.
so for the purpose of the town's GIS, their online service, for tax maps and such, they are considering all of this to be one lot 22, the 1.2
together.
acres, 1.3 acres
Right.
between all of it, which is what this old plan kinda shows with the house, that's a total of
Correct.
1.3. And so, Alana, with these from our paper, or, oh, I see, that's from some registry information, okay, that's a recorded plan from 78.
The colored one is the 4 lots broken down, and the orange part is she wants to if they were.
That's the
4
desired
lots,
lot to be,
Yes,
okay,
she wants to sell that orange piece.
gotcha.
Which would require, once the lots are separated, that would require a lot line adjustment. Right?
Right, that's what I was getting at, so you have, the way you're indicating is that you have, it's really 4 lots, so,
Via the deed, it's 4 parcels, yes.
yeah, so, one that does have road frontage, 2 that wouldn't have road frontage, and the second one that's rectangular, that kinda makes those back lots. So if you're proposing that you would unmerge the lots, for that lot to have frontage, you would then have to do a lot line adjustment too.
not
So,
enough
yeah.
frontage, is that what he's saying?
The only thing is,
this, right?
because, well, my concern is, it would be a lot line adjustment,
lot
my
line
issue is,
adjustment.
if this is recognized, if you go through the process of undoing the involuntary lot merger at the town level, is if this is, this long rear, this would be cutting this in half, which that severely makes that more non-conforming and not a the question is, are these buildable lots once you take them out for anything?
Yeah.
So,
It's creating
I
a
would-
non-conforming lot.
I would recommend that that little piece left over from the lot in the back be merged with the two remaining, so there'll only be 3 lots
Yeah,
at the end of the plan.
right, so
The one.
if you were,
I
to-
got you, yeah, so instead of leaving 4, you might end up with 3,
if you were to unmerge this,
I got you.
say you were to unmerge this back into 4 lots,
Just for,
then you would do a lot line adjustment and potentially abandon or recreate a lot line here, abandon this, so you get 3.
And it wouldn't be, it wouldn't trigger subdivision, cause you're not creating new lots, you're actually potentially removing,
But on a lot line adjustment, it's not supposed to, when we do a lot line
You're not supposed to
adjustment,
change
we're not
number of
supposed
lots.
to create a non-conforming lot,
But
with
you'd
a
be-
lot line adjustment.
You'd be,
unless it's already non-conforming.
you'd be making a current nonconformity less.
But
non-
isn't,
Right,
isn't the
because it was-
suggestion you're making is to not do a lot line adjustment, to combine the little rectangular lot on the road with the back lot that she wants to sell?
Or,
And the next one, and
two,
the
or
abutting
two of
one.
those lots.
Yeah, the kind of the proposal is to, if we can, this is all assuming the first step would be to get the old lot lines recognized through the involuntary merger. Is that, this being the fourth
Yeah.
parcel, I say, is that if you get all 4 of these reestablished, is you could file an application to absorb the 2 halves of this lot into these 2 lots, so these become all the way back. So it's actually a lot, I think we, application wise, if we do lot merger, because there'd be multiple steps, you'd be doing a lot merger at that point. Still don't think it's subdivision because you're not creating new lots, but.
You'd be dissolving a lot.
Yeah.
Satisfy the zoning.
So if, regardless of one part of it, so if you decided to go before the select board and filed an application to unmerge, involuntarily merge lots, that would potentially get you either 2 lots or 4, depending on, I don't know how that request works, if it goes, you know, you involuntarily merge all of them at once, so you get back to 4. Then you would end up with 4 pre-existing non-conforming lots, so you run into problems with doing things with them. So selling them you could do, but building on them, anything else, you run into some issues. So your next step would probably be, if you wanted to make them a little more attractive for sale, was to create frontage on that road, which would probably require a lot line adjustment, and potentially abandonment of one of those, that rectangle, that small rectangle that's in the front, because that's blocking those other 2 lots.
Right, I was gonna ask you about a variance, because all the homes
Yep.
in my area, I have very, you know, some are 50 feet, some
Yep.
are 100, and what have you, and I was hoping that, because of my establishment there so long, and what have you, that there would be perhaps an opportunity for me to apply for a variance to maybe adjust this a little bit.
Yeah, so you can always apply for a variance, you know, when you go to, you can always ask for a variance to the zoning board. Usually it's in regards to a specific condition, you know, that's up to that board whether or not they grant the request or not. And no matter what, if you did unmerge these and then decide to try to build on them or something, you're probably gonna run into a requirement to get a variance for a number of reasons.
Variance.
What?
Variance.
Yes,
Yeah, so you would end up needing that. So there might be other ways with like rights of way, but you'd basically be creating lots that have no frontage.
on the road.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of the big one, because this is now a town road, you're required to have frontage on that road. Because currently that back long rectangular one with all the frontage is likely not buildable in terms of being able to fit any structure on it, and also doesn't have frontage on the lake, so it's not really desirable. So if you kept the lots as is, you'd have to have an avenue of like providing an easement over that lot, but that doesn't count as frontage in the eyes of, it still require a variance, because easement doesn't meet frontage or satisfy frontage requirements. And the big one here is if in the end, all 4 of these total up to 1 acre, so even if you reestablish all 4, or even decide to go through and you end up with 3 lots because of some moving of lot lines, you're gonna end up with, lots in about 1/3 of an acre range. And I think, the biggest thing there is, and we see this a lot here on the lake, is some of the biggest hurdles. We don't approve construction of houses on single-family lots, but, again, you might, because you need to do a septic system, so there's certainly shoreland permitting for any new structure on the lake, which is governed by the state. There's a whole shoreland bureau.
Right.
Along with that, you have to satisfy the septic design requirements and well requirements. We see a lot of lots on the lake that are coming to the zoning board for a variance just for the septic system, because it has to be a minimum of 10 feet from the lot line, I believe, on non-conforming lots. So it's, some of the biggest hurdles are gonna be probably it's a lot to get through the shoreland permitting. I think you said you had a surveyor.
I do,
that
Peter
you worked-
Landry.
Okay, yes, I mean, he should be very familiar with this, but, and he's a septic designer as well, so, yeah, if you can get the lots recognized, it's just kinda going through the motions, I'd say, to maybe adjust lot lines. Because this is now a town road and there's the frontage requirement, I think there's going to be a need to have some moving of lot lines, but also maybe absorbing that rear parcel up near the road into the 2 that are lower, that have the frontage on the lake, just because you're gonna need to provide that frontage, or you can't pull a building permit on a lot that doesn't have frontage on the road, so.
You can't put, you would have to have these extend out to here,
Right,
because you can't get a building permit if it doesn't, but you know that.
right, I know,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah,
And-
so,
The only other thing, Moores Road itself is one of the ones that was adopted by the town without any meets and bounds set for it, so if this is on a section of that road, if any of that road goes through the property, none of Moores Road goes through your properties that you're aware of?
No, no, what?
Moores Road,
Yes,
does that go through your property at all?
oh,
It goes-
through the property?
Yeah.
No, I'm
okay.
fenced all the way around,
looks
completely.
like it just skirts around the back.
Yeah, okay. So I think we're okay there.
Yeah, I mean, I think your biggest step is gonna be just seeing if you can get that involuntary lot merger process
All right.
revoked. I've never gone through it myself, but, maybe Peter has. So that,
There's actually an application online for it.
For the unmerging,
Yeah, there's an application on the town website.
and that's what you suggest, to unmerge it instead of try to do a lot adjustment the way it is under one parcel?
Because
Okay,
if we treat it as one parcel, it's a subdivision. And then you're gonna have a
Oh.
lot of variances that you have to qualify
Oh, okay.
for.
right.
Because you're already considered a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
yeah,
You'd be trying to make it smaller,
yeah, yeah.
so.
Because if you can get the old lots recognized, as Ed said,
A
then
beginning.
they're recognized as
Yeah.
pre-existing.
Okay,
So there's regulations on them, but not, you don't have to come before us to get approval to break them out. Which is, nowadays, our minimum zoning is 2 acres, so you gotta think your total is pretty much
Yeah.
half of that, so, yeah, that'd be a lot more involved process at the zoning board, before we even get to any, well, again, I think it'd still be residential, it'd pretty much be all at the zoning board with a bunch of width variances. if you-
and then
do that.
where do I go after I see the selectmen? What's the next process? Hopefully they'll agree, but what would be the next step?
So if the select board granted the unmerger, if the select
Right.
board granted that.
Right.
And made you back to 2 lots, 4 lots, set it back to 4 lots again. Your next step depends on what you wanna do. So, if you're looking to convey or sell one of those lots,
That's what I,
they don't have frontage, so they have technically no access to those lots. You'd be selling a landlocked property. So an option would be to do a lot line adjustment, to abandon a lot line or create a new one that potentially would take you from 4 lots to 3, and take that rectangle that's along the road and take that land and make it into those other 2. So you,
So that'd be through this process.
or if you kept it as, you know, moving it into yours one way or the other.
Right.
But
And
that
it-
way that lot, at least one of those lots would have frontage. It still wouldn't be enough frontage, so it would still require variances to build. But it gets them one step closer.
And so, and Peter, it's an application, it's called a voluntary lot merger, so that's essentially, all this is assuming if 4 lots are reestablished, the next application would be a voluntary lot merger. That's an application on the planning board website. I'm sure Peter's familiar, it's similar to if you do an adjustment, so there's all application for everything, but, the voluntary lot merger would be for you because you would have common ownership between those parcels, so you're allowed to kind of absorb areas to other lots. And I believe when you do that, you would essentially be establishing that extension of the lot line for the frontage, because you're taking those 2 lower parcels in the lake and saying, I wanna pull this area in, and you'd be establishing an extension of that split line, so. I think that would actually create the 3 lots, in theory, that then those could be the lots that you could post for sale or choose to keep for yourself, however you wanna do, but.
Right.
That would be one application, so I don't think there'd be no need for an adjustment application after that, cause that would create the lot line, for the 3 lots, so. And obviously, Peter would do this all on a plan anyway, so.
yeah, he said he'd be very helpful with it.
He's done more of the recent lake surveys that we've seen, so,
He's been involved a lot with this area, yeah.
yes.
So through this discussion now, you're saying, go ahead now and go to the select board and apply for an application there. Okay. And then at some point, if this process follows through, do I come back and see you all at some point again, or are we done? I mean,
The
not that I don't wanna see
voluntary,
you.
the voluntary lot merger, yeah. The voluntary lot merger, that second step, that would come to us.
Oh, I come back again? Oh, good.
Just to observe, Peter would create a plan that shows this is where the areas are. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, well, I thank you so much for helping me sort this out. And thank you, Alana, because this is where you felt that I would get the right direction. I really, I should have a surveyor sitting right next to me, but I said I'd try.
I know Peter watches our meetings, so he'll,
Huh?
Peter watches our meetings, so I'm sure he's taking notes probably as he's watching this. And he probably already knows all this.
Oh, he's a trip. Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate all your help. Thanks.
Our planner was also very impressed with your penmanship. It is exquisite, so,
Thank you.
a lost form, thank you.
Yeah, it is a loss.
A little flourish.
So that's it for cases and conceptuals. This next part of our meeting, we always save for public comment. Anybody that wants to come in and talk to us, has questions about our processes, procedures, journal questions. If it's case specific, we can't necessarily answer it, but this is the time of night to come see us. There's nobody else here, so I'll move on from that. Let's see, we have 2 sets of minutes for approval. Minutes of July 12th and July 26th.
And get that application for this.
Shoot.
Unfortunately, I wasn't here for either one, so I can't help you.
The minutes of July 26th for me, I looked through, I was all set with those. Those are very short. Thank you all. I apologize for not being here at that meeting. I was under the weather. The minutes of July 12th, I had just two minor edits. I'll just read them in. Line 138, replace the word recalled with reiterated. And line 148, recommend delete both instances of the word that. Makes it read better.
I don't have the copy of the minutes of,
7/12, they're not in here.
No, we got them last week or the week before.
I saw them via email.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if I mailed them or not, so.
I think I saw them.
No, you sent them because we put them on hold because we had such a short, small group last week.
We did, intimate.
Mr. Davies, if you wanna, if you would like us to table those, we can definitely table.
no, I don't care. If you've gone over them, I haven't, and, so if they've been gone over and been corrected, that's fine with me.
Yeah, and I always do the first edit and send it back out.
Do a motion?
Please.
I'll make a motion that we approve the July 12th, 2023 and the July 26th, 2023 minutes as amended.
Second,
It's a second by Ms. Anderson, a second by Mr. Davies. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
All opposed, motion carries 5-0. All right, select board, staff board member updates. Mr. Davies,
I have none.
Mr. McKinnon?
No, just cause, sorry, I was able to, vacations and work, I've had to miss the last two. I know you're gonna be discussing the August 23rd, meeting as well, but, no, it looks like September, looking at the minutes, looks like we're gonna have a busy September.
Yeah.
So to your point, I guess I'll let you get into it, but I know you had contemplated, unfortunately, right now, we have, I think you mentioned, we're talking about a separate meeting then, potentially, if we move it?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so, other than that, nothing for me.
so August 23rd, and I'm very remiss to propose this, but I will no longer be in town. Mr. McKinnon has now a work commitment for that night. I think Ms. Anderson indicated she will not be available on August 23rd. So I think it's an important meeting to have. I'm fine with continuing to have it if someone else wants to chair, but my proposal would be that we reschedule that we cancel the 8/23 meeting and either reschedule to August 30th or sometime in September. That would leave us with one meeting in August, so we end up adding a meeting in, so like as a workshop.
How booked is the first week of September?
It's Labor Day week usually. so-
No, I mean, that, you said.
Oh, the first meeting in September?
Yeah,
We continued, we continued,
13th and 27th are the meetings in September.
Is it two or, I thought we had like three.
we continued the two tonight
We could,
to the 13th.
What about the 30th of August?
So, yeah, I was gonna jump in, I know,
That? Oh, okay.
I can't, but if the rest of you can.
I know I'm available the 30th, I guess the next option would be the 6th of September, which is the first Wednesday in
But
September.
the problem with that is that's
But-
Labor Day
Yeah.
week, so a lot of people are gone.
Right,
Yeah, that's Labor Day
but-
week.
I know I'm available on the 30th,
Just check my schedule,
pushing
sorry,
it
I'm
a
on my
week.
phone, just looking at my calendar again.
is this
And that's a-
room available on the 30th?
Charlene is not.
No, but is this room available?
Oh, should be.
Yeah, I don't know that
Is there anybody
there's
that
any
has
other
opposing
Wednesday night meetings. But you gotta check with the ZBA and the conscom too, right? So,
CBA meets on the third Tuesday, though.
I think
It's not
it's,
the third Tuesday.
yeah, but I mean, we would need to check to see if it works for them as well.
make it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I say we try and not push it too long if we propose the 30th, just again to try and get it on the books, cause I worry that like I said, we're gonna be busy in September. I'd hate to do 3 weeks of meetings in a row is gonna be very
And
hard.
they're big cases in September.
Yeah, and then the problem is,
We're getting
you're into October, and then when you're in October, you're into November, and then by November, you're,
Articles that don't get done.
yeah, so I'd hate to, kinda
So-
eat into our schedule too much.
I'm gonna repropose it for the 30th of August.
And ask
And I'm
for,
gonna send out agenda items, so everybody has a list, so that way, anybody that can attend can at least provide comment back. So, these are my list of invitees, so planning board, zoning board, conservation commission, town administrator. Let's see, the other departments, police, fire, building inspector, certainly, the road agent, if they'd like to attend or provide any kind of comment. Recreation. Don't think we need school board at this point, because that's usually separate if we're gonna meet with them. Probably provide notice to the Lamprey River Advisory Committee, just because we involve them so much. And I was gonna have Blair kinda just touch base with the other planners for the surrounding towns, just to see if, to let them, know we're gonna have a joint meeting, not inviting them to that, but if they wanna share anything that they're seeing or they're working on, it kinda helps us, again, know, like, you know, if the neighboring community is all of a sudden running into all this one thing, we're probably next, so it's, be prepared, plan for it, or if they're proposing something drastic, it could affect us, so. So those are my thoughts on it.
Was one of your anticipated agenda, I think it was CIP, but was that to discuss CIP items, or just to try and like throw it out there that, hey, it's coming? Or, CUP, is that what?
This is Blair's revised,
The action items, yeah.
so I sent it to Blair and he sent it revised.
I mean, that's certainly something to think about too, is not to throw more on the plate, but it seems like CIP, I don't even know if they really met last year. I know there's a lot of confusion between who's responsible for it. I still don't know if we've even figured that out.
That's something we'll definitely have to make sure I get clarification on before we get into that.
Because I'd like to encourage some of these departments that were on your invitee list to really think about CIP, because based on the current CIP, there's some drastic changes to the impact fee schedule that we need to make unless there is things anticipated, so.
And I can work on some verbiage on that for an email, unless it's not all on you to, what goes out to invitees to say, we're planning on this, can you? Because again, I expect some of these departments, they may not be able to attend, but they can provide input to us, and especially if they have anything they think might be coming up for CIP, that would impact CIP or qualify for the CIP. So I'll refine that list, the potential agenda item, make sure it's out by next week anyway, just so that people can start thinking about it, adding to it, and getting that on the books.
Do we need to vote to change the meeting date?
I think it's better to, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we, reschedule the planned August 23rd joint meeting to August 30th at 7 PM in this room.
a second.
It's a motion by Mr. McKinnon, a second by Ms. Mooney to reschedule the August 23rd joint planning board, zoning board meeting to August 30th at 7 PM. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries 5-0. Again, apologies to everybody for that. But I think we'll get it done. One thing I have to add to my agenda was, there was that question to add an option about looking into a growth moratorium or building moratorium. So I'll make sure that that's on the agenda as well as a discussion point. So I'll go, do you guys want me to read what I have as potential items yet, or just send it out when we get
You
it?
just send it out.
Yeah, just send it out.
All right. The only other notes I had, so quorum for us is 4, unless did we change the you not be able to be chair if
bylaws, yes.
Yeah.
Change it, amend it, yeah, okay, so that's fine. So that complicates things if the two of us aren't there, but, Blair had sent out something, and we'll forward this email to everybody. New Hampshire ODP, there's a training session Thursday, August 17th at noon, regarding zoning and amendment processes, the zoning and amendment process. So we'll send that out to everybody. It looks like it's free, from what I could tell. And I noticed online that the town now has a stormwater asset management report, which included culvert mapping of all the culverts in town, which is something we were kind of saying would be very useful for a lot of planning going forward. So that's online. I don't know who has access to it, to be able to look at the
Highway Department.
the culverts and
I thought that had
things.
been done several years ago.
It was voted on several years ago.
He was just completed.
Oh,
There's actually, it was actually interesting to hear him talk about it. He was here on Monday at the Board of Selectmen, and he did a pretty good presentation, and there was a woman from the state who kind of oversees, because it's a forgiven loan, so it's, I think the town 3 years ago voted $30,000 for this program, but, that is forgiven once the final product is kind of reviewed and shown that the staff have done the required training, which I know he had high praises for, the town staff at the highway department doing the asset management, but it is good because it includes, I think he said, if you went off of the standard criteria for what triggers the need to replace, you potentially are looking at $1 million worth of pipe that needs to be replaced right now, or should have been scheduled by now already. But to your point, it's really good to see in terms of new development. The highway department now, it's not a publicly available GIS, but as part of our request to say the road agent, is hopefully he would look and see within proximity, well, what is his software show for infrastructure problems or something like that, so. It's good to have even a town that, it's a lot of culverts, but culverts are also still very expensive to replace, just like every other utility, so.
Yeah, the major subdivisions coming in, and the frontage is where the large culvert is, or culvert that needs to be upgraded or replaced. It's a good option that the applicant would, potentially incorporate that.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me. Ms. Mooney,
I think I'm all set, thank you.
I'm all set.
Lana, anything new for us? That's it.
I move we adjourn?
We have a motion by Ms. Mooney and a second by Mr. McKinnon to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.